Hello, everyone. My name is Katia Woods. I am the facilitator for the AAFCA Roundtables. Today, you are joining us for a very special episode of AAFCA Roundtables for Mr. Malcolm's List. Joining us are some of the members who will be asking our talent about this marvelous film. First, Reggie Ponder from Chicago, KB from Houston, Nancy Green in Baltimore, Jill Monroe in Los Angeles, Bonnie DeShong in Chicago, Dana Abercrombie in New York, Carolyn Hines in Toronto, and I myself am in Philadelphia. Members, do what you do best.
My dearest Selena, will you come visit me in London? I promise you will be well entertained. I need your assistance. There is a gentleman, Mr. Malcolm. He humiliated me. No. I then found out he had a list.
You have a list of qualifications for a bride?
I would love for Mr. Malcolm to receive the comeuppance he deserves. Plus, it could be rather fun. If we present you as the perfect woman, then he discovers he does not meet the requirements on your list. That would be a perfect sort of poetic justice.
Mr. Malcolm, there's someone I want to introduce you to, Miss Selena Dalton.
I'm very pleased to make your acquaintance. Perhaps you might join me for a tour of the picture gallery.
Most certainly have a reputation. Is that the famous Mr. Malcolm? Do you know him?
And you believe this description of me?
He was very impressed by her wit and humor.
I must be nearsighted.
May I assist?
Selena, it is working.
Why did you come to London, Miss Dalton?
Because I was lonely.
I was lonely too before you came.
Your list is a shield. You do not want to give your heart to a woman unworthy.
It gives us hope, and hope is a good thing.
Perhaps I am mistaken in thinking hope a useless thing.
You're being blinded by his intelligent conversation and devastatingly handsome good looks. What?
You thought to humiliate Malcolm, and you end up presenting him with the perfect wife, and that must sting.
Wish me luck, old boy.
I don't think you'll need it.
It is time to show Malcolm your list.
I do not think Mr. Malcolm is the man you think he is.
Seems you have been deceiving me from the beginning.
Love cannot be planned so carefully. It will stir things up a bit. That is part of its charm.
Hi, so I'm KB with Through the Lens of Lady KB, and my question is for Chape. So what are the qualities beyond the list that you feel like Jeremy learns from his interactions with Selena that ultimately, make him a better man?
Wow, what a question. What does he learn? I think in his list, there is no space for life. There is no space for independent thought, for vivacity, for surprise or spontaneity. And I think he learns that for something to be alive and fulfilling and growing, that it can't be written down. There is an intangible quality to love that is important for it to thrive. And she brings that into his life in spades and bucketful.
Lovely film. Thank you.
I'm Reggie Ponder, the real critic out of Chicago, and my question is also for you, Chape. I did a little research and I saw that you said your favorite book is Love in Color, and you talked about how they had these unapologetically Black people way back in ancient times, and you really didn't have words at that time to kind of describe your feeling about being able to see that. Now having to play not ancient times, but back in time in this, during the times in the 1800s, has that informed you to think about characters back in the day? And did it give you a different kind of narrative now having played a character that's back in time?
Absolutely. I think having read that book from cover to cover many times now and playing a role as a Black man in a period drama, like my horizons are entirely expanded. I've said before that I wasn't able to imagine myself in this role when I first was offered it. But having not only imagined it, but hopefully achieved it. I think most people have said the film's been quite successful. I'm very grateful for the good words. But like the possibilities are endless now. Somebody asked me like, oh, what, now that you've opened the door to different time periods in your own imagination, what do you see yourself doing next? And I was just like, everything, you know, I want to continue to nurture a limitlessness to my imagination, and hopefully in the imagination of young global majority boys and girls and non-binary individuals, to even if they haven't seen themselves yet, we say if you can see it, you can be it, but maybe you don't have to see it. If you can dream it, you must do it, I think, is what I've come away from this process with.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Carolyn Fisher, Here's What Happened, and Carolyn Toss podcast. So this question is for both you, Shope, and for you, Zawi. The thing about this film, it's called Mr. Malcolm's List, and it's about this list that Jeremy has for the perfect wife that he's looking for. But the thing is that Selena doesn't have a list, but she knows exactly what she wants in a partner. So I want both of you to talk a bit about how Selena not being bound down by a list and not being caught up with the idea of an ideal husband or ideal partner actually allows them both to progress as in a relationship, but also as individual characters. So we can begin with you, Zawi.
Hi, Carolyn. Nice to meet you. And just so great to be part of this roundtable discussion. I've been a real fan of the ones that you've done previously, and so thank you for inviting us to the table. I think that's such a good question. A scene that I was really happy made it into the film was the establishing scene of the movie, which is a flashback to a young Julia, my character, and a young Selena making a vow that despite their difference in social standing, that they would remain connected in their bid for finding a love match in society later on, rather than a match for just the domestic and financial gain, as was the case at the time. And I feel like that's a really wonderful message. And you're so right, Selena doesn't have something written down necessarily, but she does stick to the courage of that conviction that she had as a girl. And perhaps another relatable quality to this film is how we can self-abandon with age, and how we can become very pressurized by society and its expectations, and lose sight of that pure desire and that pure objective that we had at a time when we weren't under those kind of constraints. So I love that question, because it really kind of makes me think about how she's managed to keep that fire alive inside of her. But Jeremy has that fire too. You know, he's just drunk the Kool-Aid a bit.
That's a good interpretation.
You drank the Regency Kool-Aid. You're looking for too much.
Yeah, Carolyn, can I have the question again, please? Sometimes I just love listening to Zawi speak, and I just like completely lose everything else.
Isn't he the perfect leading man? I mean, for God's sake, intelligent, wise.
Yeah, no, sure. So my question was how it's interesting that the film is about his list, about Jeremy's list, but it kind of like also kind of shows that Selena not being bound down by her own list and her own ideas. She wasn't even looking for a partner. Actually helps him to realize that he was being too entrenched in his own idea of ideal personal mate. So for Jeremy, what do you think it was about her that made him realize, you know what, these lists aren't actually good when it comes to looking for a partner?
He limits himself with a list. He then cannot see anything beyond this ecosystem he's created for himself. And she comes and says that the world is so much bigger than these 10 points. Like, your mind can be so much bigger than these 10 points. And to be organic, to be surprised, to let things happen is like, that's the spice of life, you know? If you say, I only ever want to eat fish and chips for dinner, you write that down, then like, what is your experience of life? She completely shakes him up. And offers him something that he couldn't imagine for himself. Similar in a way that Emma Holly-Jones offered something to me that I couldn't imagine for myself in the role. Selena does the same with Malcolm. It's a parallel that I hadn't seen yet. So thank you for enlightening me to that.
Sure, thank you. And I love the film. Thank you.
Nancy Green with Film Critique. And first of all, Sope, congratulations on the second season of Gangs of London. That's great. And I also wanted to ask about the movie. I found the list very interesting in that we kind of still do that sort of thing today. You hear about people having their preferences, their ticks, the things that are their non-negotiables. So I wanted to know, what do you think about that? And in terms of the movie, how does that list kind of compare to the way it's done today?
One of the reasons the movie is so relatable and the themes of this, like the criteria, is because, like you said, yeah, everybody does have not necessarily a physical list, or that maybe people haven't sat down and thought about like, oh, I want this and not that. But people do have like hopes and dreams and wishes and desires that they want to share with someone who might relate to them, you know? So when he says he wants her to be well read, it's probably because, I want someone who's interested in the same things as I am, so that when we're sat at home at dinner, we're not just like eating and looking at each other. We have something that we can share, If you're on a dating app and you say, I like surfing, you're probably looking to share surfing with somebody, or at least someone who's open to it. So yeah, the concept of sharing the things that I like with somebody that I like, is not ridiculous or far-fetched, but it's the scientific, rigid nature of it that doesn't work. And it doesn't work today either. I think you have to be open to new experiences, and you have to be open to other people's experience of life, other people's dispositions. Otherwise, you'll end up basically chasing yourself, which is like this narcissistic, weird thing that I don't think makes any relationship happy.
Hey, Nancy, do you know what? One of my favorite lines in the film of yours, Chope, is when you're on a long walk with Frida, Selena, and you say very vulnerably, actually, holding the teacup right, or the balls or whatever, are the parts of this courtship, or this parts of this society that I understand, and all the rest you find really, I can't remember the word that you use, but you find overwhelming. I think that's such a window into that character, and makes a real sense of why he would use the list as a shield, as the script goes. And I the more I think about this list and all the slightly unreachable qualities on the list that are obviously what make my character extremely angry at the beginning of the film, when I think about them objectively, they really are these barriers that you're putting up to potentially finding the right partner. So it's almost like you're saying, this is what I want, but at the same time, you're pushing away, as you say, Chope, the human spark that can just exist between two people. So I love that it's a sign of his vulnerabilities, and I love that he's open about those vulnerabilities in moments in the film that feel really pivotal.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jill Monroe, Access to the Life. This question is for both of you. So in thinking about the concept of a list, not just applied romantically, but in life, we all sort of set up lists and goals for achievements for us. And sometimes thinking outside of that box can help us get there. With being that a career in film, in theater, in the arts, what are some principles that you both may have held fastly or strongly to early in your career that you have since, for whatever reason, now think at or look at differently because of experience or someone opening you up to another vantage point?
That's a great question, Jill. Chope?
I'm racking my brains.
We're just like, we are moralless. We are compassless actors. It's a really good question to think about. What are the convictions that have guided you through? I mean, while you're thinking, Chopé, I think for me, they haven't always been clear. I didn't necessarily always have language for them, if that makes sense. I knew when I was in the right places and doing the right work that felt not, just like work that you were doing because it was enjoyable, but work that was truly meant for you, work that somehow you left changed somehow, bettered somehow. And I think over time, the language that has come to me about what that feeling is, and the staunch way that I've sort of gone about recreating that feeling is I suppose just always being of service somehow. That's when I feel right with me. When I'm doing work that is not only creative, but somehow needle moving or somehow serving a greater purpose than just creative expression. It can't always be like that, but whenever I've come off compass or kind of lost myself a bit, I find I reshuffle the cards and I come back to that being of service, and it guides me back to the work that I'm meant to be doing, and that makes me feel anchored. So that probably, and I started acting very, very young. So I would sometimes be saying, this doesn't feel right in my gut, and I don't know why, because everyone's saying, hey, you should be so lucky for this opportunity, but oftentimes they were roles that you had to like self-abandon in order to inhabit, or roles that you knew weren't going to create more space in the world for movement and for good. So I'm very grateful to have remained acting and found more and more ways to describe exactly why and how and what that guiding light is for me.
I think that on a list I may have created for myself at the beginning of my career, there would have been a line or a point of it about control, that if I didn't get a job, or if I didn't do this, that, or the other, then it was my fault. I was deficient in some way, which in hindsight is so ridiculous, And it's the same thing with Malcolm. He wants to control this thing that is not in his control or shouldn't be. So yeah, I used to beat myself up a lot, sorry. Thinking that I wasn't good enough, or that I hadn't done something, or my imagination wasn't broad enough, or I'd done something technically wrong, or I'd annoyed somebody. Like, I had a big complex about that. And I found that desire for control, or that assumption of control, made me feel even more powerless than I already was. So I just sort of, like, over the course of my career, I've relinquished that. And it's about knowing that I've done my best. That is what I can control, And then the rest of it is, once again, back to the whole themes of spontaneity and organic experiences. But yeah, that's definitely something that I've pushed off me, like,
Thank you both so much for your thoughtful answers.
Hi, I'm Bonnie DeShong from Chicago, Bonnie's Eye to the Sky. This is for both of you. This romantic genre that has just taken on and exploded, with most of the actors fully clothed all the time, but it's like that romance. And especially with seeing people of color as the leads and in prominent positions. Why do you think that this is taking such a big surge? And how did you feel about acting in those type of roles, in this type of role especially? How is it different an experience?
Such a great question, isn't it, Chopé?
Yeah, super.
I mean, I feel like we've talked about this
off screen a lot. It's something that's come up a lot, actually, Bonnie, and what has been really fulfilling about this job is we are an ensemble. And as you said, we have more than one person of color within that ensemble. We are protagonist, we are antagonist, we are romantic lead, we are, person without much status, we're a person with a lot of status. There's such a great dialogue between all of us as actors and as characters, that it couldn't not come up as a question like, hey, how are you feeling doing this? Or how are you feeling stepping into this new genre that you've been locked outside of for a long time? Because it has felt as an actor literally like being next door to a block party that's happening, and you're like, hey, is there a party? Can I come? Everyone's like, there's not a party. And you're like, well, I can kind of hear it. It's quite loud. It's keeping me awake. Like, no, there's not a party in here. You don't. So it suddenly arriving at the party, you go and find the people in the party where you're like, hey, we've been trying to get into this party for years. How are you feeling being here? And it has been a really natural part of the discourse that we've had on set, and the bonding that I feel like we've had. To speak for myself personally, I feel like it's an opportunity to step into my childhood imagination. I grew up through the British education system, which is extremely Austen heavy and Dickens heavy and Shakespeare heavy and Tolstoy heavy. And so you grow up reading these tomes of work, imagining yourself there, and then suddenly when it comes to interpreting those imaginations that you have, or these books visually, suddenly you find that you completely disappear, and that's beyond jarring. So for me, it's been these years of holding this like joy and passion around that type of material as a person, whilst also holding a sadness around that material as an actor. So for me, stepping into it is so multifaceted. It's actually really complex. It hasn't just been about going and putting a bonnet on and a corset. That was fun. But I felt very emotional stepping into it because, because of this feeling of having been kept out for so long, but also because it felt so soft and so aspirational. And I was like, why wouldn't people think I could do this? Why would people think Chope was not allowed to do this? Why would people think Frida was not allowed to do this? Ashley Park was not allowed to do this. Why wouldn't you think we were capable and deserving of this lightness and this tenderness and this softness? Because this is a light genre. Obviously, things go wrong and we always come back to a resolution. And that was a lot to contend with. And then it was also a process of like moving away from a lot of the iconography of the genre and deeply connecting on the most cultural, authentic level possible to embody these characters. Because I could feel that the internalized otherness was stopping me from bringing my whole self to these roles because of all the movies that I've been saturated with for so long. And so it was when I started to speak to Chope, when I started to speak to Frida, when we started to say, hey, do you know what? let's take it out of the world of Jane Austen for a second. You know, I love Bollywood film. I said to Frida one day, let's talk about Bollywood for a second. Let's talk about the South Indian reaction to marrying outside of your class, you know, or not finding a match at a certain time. You have all the Jane Austen inspired scenarios right there. You have them in African theatre and literature and folklore. Those scenarios are everywhere. They don't belong to one culture. But weirdly enough, it was a huge undoing to connect to that fully and bring that fully to the table, playing these parts, or certainly playing my part, speak for myself. So there were like so many journeys. And I spent the 2 weeks of prep on the movie in quarantine in Ireland crying, because there was a letting go and a healing and some kind of deep reparation happening. I know I'm talking about a light and frothy movie, okay? But the process it included all of that for me. So I feel very happy to have made a light and fluffy movie on the surface and be able to share with you the deeper resonance potentially underneath it.
Sharpay, you want to jump in, or are you okay?
Zoe is such a comprehensive
answer. Joey, you need to jump in.
No, I'm just like,
I just talk for long periods of time.
My entire experience, but also for me, I suppose that revolution may not have happened on the same scale because I didn't have the imagination when I was younger. Like when I was excluded from that party, I told myself there was no party. You know, so for me to know that there was a party in the first place, it's like, okay, cool. Let me get my two-step on, you know. I wasn't ready to like, I was so happy to be a part of the party that I didn't realize that I'd been excluded from it in the first place. Which is not entirely, that's a miss. Yeah, I've taken the analogy too far. That's why that didn't work.
No, it worked.
But it was a case of like, I needed to believe myself before I started wondering why I wasn't believed before, you know? That indoctrination was so deep set. And I suppose like for me, one of the triumphs I'm praying for this movie and the wave of productions that are being made recently is that kids born today don't have the same hang-ups and issues that we had growing up, that we had to wait over 30 years of our lives to realize. Not saying that we are superheroes or anything like that, but I really hope that we can prevent that self-doubt from happening to the next generation.
Thank you.
Oh, Dana Abercrombie, the Coalition. My question is for Zoe. I was wondering, you know, Frida Pence's character, Selena, said in the movie that if she wasn't thrust into this situation kind of against her will, she would have never experienced what love was. And so I was wondering, Julia, what lessons or what has she learned from this experience, either negative or positive, that you think that she will keep with her now?
Such a good question, Dana. I mean, we see sometimes at points in this film someone that we are not sure will ever learn any kind of lesson because of headstrongness and her overwhelming desire to win. I don't think she even knows what she wants to win. Really, she just wants to win at society. Do you know what I mean? She just wants to complete level 12 of existing in British society. But when we do finally see her learning and cracking open, I think the lovely message to be found there is she finds love because of her faults rather than despite them. And I thought that was such a contemporary and relatable message to carry in that character. She shows the not good parts of herself quite clearly to this captain, right, who's come on the scene, that you know, she's telling him he's beneath her. She's, you know, he witnesses her completely breaking down after this terrible plot to shame her friend. And not to shame her friend, but to derail her friend and the potential happiness that she sees that she could have. And he still says, I'd like to make it work. Now, I'm not perpetuating this terrible rhetoric of, as a woman, you should wait to be chosen. No. No person should wait for that. You choose you, and then you hope to choose someone else who also chooses you. But I think there was something really lovely in the fact that she gets to be warts and all and still have this redemptive moment of finding a match at the end of the movie.
Here we go. Hi, Katia Woods, Couple Soul Show in the Philadelphia Tribune. I really enjoyed this movie. I love these types of movies. I'm always for a good period piece. And I echo what Bonnie said. It was incredibly sexy and fun, and everybody kept their clothes off. So my question to you is, I feel like your characters are two sides of the same coin, except you do it in different ways. You know, you both want something that's very superficial, but it's instead of just leaning into it and that type of thing. So what about love has surprised you? Because both of them are finding out that the thing that's perfect for them is not the thing that was either on the list, or in your case, Awe, your character, he wasn't this polished, he was more brash, very direct, and he blew right through her, you know. But in spite of all of that, he's like, I still love you, and I still am interested in having a life. And I think, at least for me, that's how love happened. It came totally not the way that I had imagined. So what about love has surprised you? And we'll start with you, Zawe.
Such a good question, Katia. Again, I feel like that Malcolm and Julia are two sides of the same coin, as you say, which is absolutely spot on, because they're both so guarded. They are both very reticent to show their vulnerabilities to the world at all, which can sometimes be a sign of shaky foundations of self-love. You realize when you go on your therapeutic journey at some point in life, or start to have an awakening later in your life, and all the important stuff starts to come up. So I think, interestingly, the thing that has always surprised me about love is how important self-love is to unlocking it. I mean, thankfully now we have the very much trademarked, branded RuPaul, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love somebody else? Can I get an amen? Which I say to myself almost hourly. So I think that has been the most surprising thing for me, that I've been very blessed to have so much love in my life. But when it goes on to the next level is when you truly fall in love with yourself, because then you unlock partnership in a very, very, very special and unique way. So that's not necessarily been a surprise. I mean, I've paid to find that surprise with professional assistance, but in all seriousness, it really feels like almost the Wizard of Oz type thing of home was there all along. All I had to do was click my heels together 3 times. It was always inside of me, and going outside here to find it was irrelevant lots of the time.
Oh, I just saw the thing that said we were running out of time, so I was just like, oh, okay.
Oh, no, you can answer. That wasn't, I'm doing double duty, but you may answer.
What about love has surprised me? How far it can take you away from what you know, who you think you are, all the blessings and compromises and mess that it comes with, who you can fall in love with when you're open to it happening to you. Yeah, I think it continues to surprise me every day.
Thank you so much for your thoughtful answers.
I wish we'd all taken our clothes off in this movie.
You two were fantastic, and we cannot wait to see more and more and more of you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you both for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we are looking forward to supporting and following your career as it continues its ascent. On behalf of the world's largest group of Black film critics, this is Gil Robertson. Have a great day.
Thank you. Privileged to be here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Absolutely.